Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to Star Wars Lads. Today, we are diving into our first of many weeks where we will be having both The Mandalorian Season 3 and The Bad Batch Season 2 coming out at the same time. So, we will be giving you both of our reviews here. We will be starting with The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 1, the premiere, Chapter 17, The Apostate. We're going to talk about all the spoilers in that and all the things we thought about that, and then dive into The Bad Batch Season 2, Episode 11, Metamorphosis. But before we do that, please hit that like button down below. We're trying to get this video to about 40 likes. Make sure you hit that like button, help us reach our goal. Also, we're trying to reach 1,500 subs here soon. We are on the way to 1,300. We're almost there. Make sure you're subscribing. If you are finding our channel for the first time, we will be doing full coverage of the end of the Bad Batch Season 2, as well as The Mandalorian, and then all of the future Star Wars shows. Star Wars Lads is the best place to get all that type of content. So let's get into The Mandalorian Season 3, Episode 1, Chapter 17, The Apostate, all the different names that this thing has. This was the first episode of The Mandalorian officially, not including the Boba Fett episodes. This was the first episode of The Mandalorian we've gotten since December 2020. So it's been, I don't know if there's ever been a more anticipated episode of Star Wars TV. Obi-Wan was up there with most anticipated series, but
No,
gosh,
definitely,
the
yeah.
hype around this, yeah, it was just ridiculous. And I think for the most part, this was definitely the type of episode you get when a show goes on hiatus for 2 years, almost three. So, Sanak, what were your thoughts overall on Chapter 17, The Apostate?
I mean, yeah, this was definitely an episode where you have to reintroduce the Mandalorian. I'm gonna slightly plug here as well. I've done the Mando season 1, season 2 recap and 2.5. So if you haven't even checked out or been able to like rewatch some of these things, we got that covered for you on the channel as well. Getting back to the point here, yeah, I mean, a lot of people have forgotten the Mandalorian, and this is exactly the episode that comes out of that. I think that's a little frustrating for me because it's directed by Rick Famuyiwa, I believe, and I've been praising him as being like one of the better, one of the top two, top three directors for the Mandalorian, and I think he did a good job here. But it's closer to serviceable. It's more like how his chapter 6 turned out, I mean, this is an episode that if you're like an Easter egg fan or you just love old Star Wars, you're gonna see parts of all those things like pop in, like the Anzalans, the Babu Frick group of people, Purgils, which was like that's the first like real like jaw dropping shot. And if you've been keeping up, that's great, that's wonderful. But I think the biggest thing you'll take away outside of just this being like setting the stage is that the graphics, the action all seems like we're reaching a new level. We that whole dogfight at the end there was insane. And that's just like a tease. I'm only expecting that to be like, yeah, we were just like giving you a taste of what was there, and we haven't seen that level of quality even in like the best episodes, like the finale of the Book of Boba Fett and even Kenobi and stuff like that. So hopefully, the next episode is where we'll like really kick things off. Some of the earlier viewers have said like it's incredible, and as long as we just start running off in the second episode, I'm fine with what we got here.
Yeah, I'm with you there in that sense. I think this was an episode that, although we all, want with our limited runtime for The Mandalorian, we only have 8 episodes, and we all want so much story and so much out of the show. This was probably a very necessary step for them, even though all of us fans are be like, ugh, like, did we even need this episode? There were some fun moments, and I agree. The action, the dogfighting in this episode was the best dogfighting we've seen in Star Wars TV. I really dug what they did here with that type of stuff, the pirate stuff, Gorian Shard or something like that. He looks like Swamp Thing.
Oh, it's such a
um,
great design. I absolutely love that. Just even just him walking, so good. Yeah.
Yeah, I really do. I loved it too. And like the way it was almost like Davy Jones-esque, like the way it's
Mm.
dripping off his face. I thought that was kind of what they're going for, but his face, the nose on his face, the eyes, it was literally just like Swamp Thing, but with long hair. It was cool. It was a cool design, but I liked it. But that was kind of the highlight of this episode. Basically, everything else was like Bo-Katan. Oh, she's on Cannavalo in her castle, and where's everybody else? So they all left her to be mercenaries because she doesn't have the dark saber, and she's kind of sitting there pouting. What's Grief Karga doing? Oh, he's the High Magistrate now. Forget about IG-11. Now he's a statue. But wait, no, Din's going to actually bring him back, which I think is. I'm glad they're bringing IG-11 back. IG-11 is one of my favorite characters. It does diminish a little bit of his sacrifice, but with droids, you never know. They can always come back. One piece of information that I definitely thought was interesting as we continue to talk about how season 3 will be a Mandalorian season, and we'll continue to flesh out what the Mandalorians are at this time, what happened to them during the Age of Rebellion, right before A New Hope. We see them united under Bo Katan, what happened in the Night of a Thousand Tears, what happened in the Great Purge. As we start to reveal all that stuff, we see, and Bo Katan has a very obviously biased perspective, but from her perspective, she is claiming that cults like the Children of the Watch and maybe Death Watch and other groups, that all of these different Mandalorian moons have different people and different cults and different races. The spin-off groups of the Mandalorian are what caused the eventual fracturing, and all the fracturing and ideology is kind of what led them to be able to be defeated so easily by the Empire. I'm excited to see some of that start to unfold. But overall, this was a pretty simple episode. It was full of dialogue that was completely expository. I wrote that down a couple times in my notes. That whole opening scene was cool. It was the cool action scene with the Mandalorians. But after that, the conversation that Din has with the armor is literally the conversation he has in the Book of Boba Fett, just in a new spot. It's like that did not need to happen a second time. There's a lot of that type of stuff. Overall, decent episode, but definitely episode 2 has to push us into the meat of the story, which it seems we're already going to the Mandalore. So I'm excited for whatever we get there. But we were not expecting, or we were hoping, but not really expecting, that the big episode of the week in terms of storytelling and pushing the boundaries of Star Wars story forward and giving us more than we thought we would get. The Bad Batch season 2 episode 11 Metamorphosis was the best episode of the Bad Batch, arguably in season 2, but definitely since the mid-season, and it was so much fun. I had a great time with this episode. This was the type of episode we've been clamoring for, an episode that isn't necessarily steeped fully in the narrative, but it has that season 1 feel of like there are tags and moments where you're inching the story along and moving it forward. That's what we've been waiting for versus these other side episodes that have pretty much nothing to do with the main story at all. This one finally got us back there. Horror Edge, Mount Tantus, all of it was so exciting right off the bat. Senek, what were your thoughts on the Bad Batch season 2 episode 11?
I think the moment I saw like the camera dynamism change, like revolving around the ship, I was like, "Hold up, this is a little different." The music score was a lot more synthy and like ominous. It's like, okay, we were hoping that this episode would be like a pretty strong build off of what came in the last two, very character focused, but kind of standard episodes. And yeah, this one definitely delivered. The big thing that we can just pull out of the bag here is that it pays off a decade-long storyline from the Clone Wars, the Zillo Beast, and how it's being used for cloning. It's got blaster resistant armor. We get to see not necessarily the same rampage because the Zillo Beast is awakened in the Clone Wars. Whereas here it's like, oh, it's like a baby clone or whatever that starts feeding off of energy and continues to grow, and it starts getting big, but it's like contained and neutralized by the end. It's great. It starts off so very much like you're watching the Alien films. I didn't even realize it was the Zillo Beast for a while, just because the design like worked into my brain. I was like, hey, that looks very like Zillo head. Like it just didn't seem like that for me. It's almost in the same way like how like Stranger Things 2 like took the Demogorgon, made it like a little tadpole, and then it grew out to this big thing. I was just like, I wasn't aware till like maybe like mere minutes before it.
Yeah, it was, like, very
It was
xenomorphic too, like,
yeah,
when it was in
yeah.
that form, it was like a big quadrupedal, like, fat xenomorph, and I thought that was, like, I was like, "Okay, we're just kinda copying Alien here," and then we get the full Zilla Beast.
Right, right, and it's got, like, the flaps that open up and stuff, and I was like, I don't that didn't, like, I didn't see how that could be Zilla. Like, it wasn't my immediate thought there. I was like, this feels like something with the title being Metamorphosis, maybe they're, like, evolving and splicing together things. Is this, like, the first steps toward, like, a strand cast design, but, like, with more like an animalistic alien species? That's where my thinking was going, but it was like, no, no, it's the Zillo Beast. It's already OP enough. You don't need to like add in all these other crazy things. But we were talking in our predictions last week, and we've been talking since Bad Batch season one about how we're trying to kind of guess the titles, what they're standing for, and we've been basically missing this whole season. But I think we did pretty well here because we also got to see a little bit of the metamorphosis from the Bad Batch themselves. Like we said in the last episode, Omega is now more integrated. She feels stronger, more real to me in this group. and you can see how her relationship with Tech has already grown tremendously. I love how they were all very serious here, and I love that they were so close to cutting things off with Sid, but also realize that Sid knows things about us. If we like do it the wrong way, she could rat us out and all that. So I like that awareness too. That is a pretty layered take on and just saying gung ho. Let's leave all that. But the Empire, that whole storyline was pretty interesting because we're back on Tantus, which again we predicted. We love that. But there's a new doctor who's and Nala Say is not apparently doing this cloning stuff, which is I think pretty interesting. I expected her to be doing things, but she seems to be refusing it so far. And then the king of our channel, the guy who gave us our first big hit, Lamasu, is alive. He's not well is an operating word here. He is in custody, but he is brought at the very end to say like, "Hey, for my freedom, I can tell you what needs to be done." And it goes back to what you're saying, Liam. Like now we're back on that season one overarching storyline, and they're like, "Hey, if you want Nalase to do anything, you have to get Omega. These clones that you encountered, they're not just anybody. They have her." And yeah, I mean, that's everything I wanted from the episode. It was just dark and it felt like everyone was taking it seriously. Wrecker, like even his voice changing to more like less of his cartoony voice to more of like, oh God, like what's happening? Like I'm like actually frightened. I'm actually scared. I was like, wow, like this is someone who's taking things seriously. If he's taking it seriously, that's how you know the whole episode is like at a different level.
Yeah, for sure. This whole thing, just right off the bat, I will say if well, I guess if you're watching this, you're already spoiled. But Disney Plus, for some reason, spoiled that the Zilla Beast was in this episode by putting it on the like thumbnail when you're browsing. I used that to get to the Bad Batch section of the show, and I was like, "That's a Zillo Beast." But then, it looked so different in the design right off the bat. I was like, "Okay, maybe there's a Zillo Beast later in this episode that comes out like in Mount Tantus, because that's where they're seemingly transporting everything that had to do with the military or clone armor or whatever." But anyway, that was a great, great opening. Like the clone commando running, being chased down. You can't see what it is that's stalking him. It is very alien. Loved it. I thought it was great. It definitely appealed to my sensibilities. I love horror, so this was awesome. And, then I do love that Nala Se is like boycotting working on cloning for the people that literally destroyed the city that she lived on every day. Like she's so complicit with the Empire. I guess I never really thought about her kind of having them go a step too far after season one, because she is really Omega is what she cares about the most, and we never really got an answer for why in season one, whether it was just because she has an emotional attachment to this girl because she's kind of raised her, or if it's because she sees her as like a prized asset. Based on our conversation with Lama Su here and the new doctor, Dr. Himla, it seems like Omega kind of has a personal type of attachment to Nalase. Like she actually cares about Omega and Omega's well-being. So I'd like to see that further to the next episode. But yeah, Lama Su, I mean, I'll link that video to the cards just for fun if you guys want to check that out. That was one of the first videos back when we were like really new to the YouTube space that just took off when we talked about, is he actually dead? We have confirmation. We can now answer that video's question. He is alive, and he's doing what typical politicians do. He's finagling away to get his freedom. There's no way the Empire let him out of there. He's a Kaminoan. Kaminoans are going to be wiped out, and their technology and everything they have is basically going to be thrown into Mount Tantus. And there's just a front that's out there about what their role is. Now that those details have kind of gotten out to the Senate and Rampart's being blamed, there's no way they're going to let a loose end like Lamasu, who knows what happened, out into the public. So I think he's hedging his bets a little bit there. But we got to see a lot of cool things too, like Fixer and Scorch were in this episode again. Like Scorch again. I love seeing Delta Squad. Want more Delta Squad. Want some real stories with Delta Squad again in canon. But overall, I really really loved this episode. I thought it was great, and I cannot wait to get back into the future. And again, to reiterate what you said, Omega, we kind of forgot about Omega being the main plot of season one because it was almost built up by episode 15 and 16. It was almost built up to be like Omega is the mystery box. Her identity is the mystery box. And then we open that box and we realize, okay, she's the Omega to Boba Fett's Alpha. She's the only other unaltered clone. And that's kind of from what the show was telling me, what I took to be like the full extent of her importance. But I'm glad that like the mystery of Omega and why she is so important to not just us as being the only female clone that we know, but also to the Kaminoans. The importance of Omega is finally returning to this show, and I think that's something that will nicely connect this to season one. We never really needed to tie in both seasons very tightly, but I think that's a good thread that definitely could be picked up. And if the second half of the Bad Batch season two continues on this route, I definitely think we'll have a market improvement over the second half of season one. It just has to find that consistency that we haven't really had in this season yet. So hopefully we get there. But I think that's going to do it for our review of the Bad Batch season 2, episode 11, Metamorphosis, and our review of Mandalorian season 3, episode 1. Let us know what you thought of both episodes, and let us know also if you like this format. We've debated on going with 2 separate videos or 1 singular video. We decided on the 1 singular video format, try to give you guys our concrete thoughts on everything. But obviously, if there are some big plot points to talk about and everything, we might consider splitting them up or doing a video about specific plot points. So let us know what your thoughts are on that moving forward in the future. If you're just finding us, please hit that like button, comment, and subscribe. We do pride ourselves on being a big channel that interacts with our community. So make sure you are commenting. We will respond to your comments and get back to you. And hopefully, all of you join us for the ride here for Mandalorian season 3 and for the Bad Batch season 2, what remains of it. We are entering the last 5 episodes of that show, so I'm excited. This episode finally got me back excited for the Bad Batch, and slightly like dreading what disappointment I'll have every single week. This one, this one's back. So
Oh yeah, agreed.
hope we're not jinxing it. I really hope we're not jinxing it. Hopefully next week is crosshair. But if you want to know our thoughts about what we think might happen next week for both The Mandalorian season 3, episode 2, or chapter 18, or The Bad Batch season 2, episode 12, make sure you check out our predictions and speculations. Those will be coming out as separate videos. So you'll want to make sure you check out both of those. They will both be out this week before the next episode of the show. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.